you everybody for having me. So I'm Ryan McCaffery. I've been doing the Ride the Lightning Tesla podcast every single Sunday since 2015, so over 7 years now. My wife got sick of hearing me talk about Tesla in the house, and I thought, well, you know what, I really like doing podcasts. I do them as part of my day job in the video game world, so I will start a Tesla podcast.
And one thing I forgot, just before we get going, I didn't check with Ryan, but I'll check now. Is it okay if everybody records what you do, take pictures of what you do?
Yeah, no worries.
So pretty much for all the speakers today, if you want to get pictures, anything like that, then feel free to do so. If there's anything the speakers don't want you to tweet out, then I'll expect them to tell you that at the time. Use the hashtag TeslaConFL if you want to tag that on social media. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Nick. So, everybody has their Tesla origin story. That's something I've learned in my years in the Tesla community from before I had my own car to now owning a Model 3 Performance. And I thought I would tell you about my story, because the way I came into Tesla is a rather interesting one. So that was taken last year, so that's where we got to. But let me back up to the beginning, because I had a fun way in. So we'll start here. This is Tesla's original Bay Area showroom in Menlo Park. I used to own a DeLorean. That was my dream car as a kid. I loved, of course, Back to the Future. You know, I was just the exact right age, and I was very lucky to get wrong way. I was very lucky to be able to buy a DeLorean in 1999, and I've had it for 12 years. That's a little bit of a different story, but it was a hell of a 12 years. And you know, I don't remember exactly how I became first aware of Tesla, where I first heard about it, but at some point, I'd heard about this startup company that was trying to do things a different way, which was eerily parallel to what DeLorean tried to do. They were trying to do a special thing in a better, different way. It didn't pan out for them, obviously. But I became aware of Tesla, and they were right in my backyard. I live in the San Francisco area. And right there in the Bay Area was this Tesla Motors. Oh, they had this little electric 2-seat sports car. So it just starts crazy, because like, if I had picked up the phone and called the Ferrari dealership and said, hey, can I bring my Tesla club down there? And maybe you could show us around, maybe you could show us the cars. They would have probably laughed and slammed the phone down. But Tesla, this startup company, said, you know what, sure, come on down, bring your club, we'll show everybody around. And so we put together this event at Tesla's Menlo Park showroom, and we got quite a turnout. That's not even all of them. But that was, I don't remember how many are in that picture, that's about a dozen maybe in that picture. So everybody get used to these kinds of pictures, because those of you that are getting Cybertrucks, this is exactly what the meetups are going to look like. Rows upon rows of stainless steel. Now, what I can tell you though is you will have a sixth sense for knowing which one is yours. Because I get that. How do you know which one is yours? You just know. You just know. It's very easy. In fact, you'll come to find out. Also, be wary. You're going to get used to fingerprints. But thankfully, not at club events, because Tesla owners will know better than to paw each other's stainless steel bodied trucks. But the general public, expect to come out to fingerprints on your stainless steel Cybertruck. Well, you'll probably not be able to park as well as a DeLorean just because you're ginormous in a Cybertruck. I just put down a Cybertruck reservation myself. Anyway, so Tesla, they say, sure, come on down. And it was Mike Falcone and Dan Nguyen were the two guys that I reached out to. And again, I thought they'd say no, but they said yes, come on down. So this isn't the original, I should put a time on this. This is August 2009. So the Roadster was about a year in, and I barely knew anything about Tesla. This is the beginning of me going down the rabbit hole, which leads to me standing here today. So this was the biggest DeLorean Club turnout, the Northern California DeLorean Owners Club, the biggest turnout we ever had at a local event. And people came out, the people that we'd never seen before brought their DeLoreans out of the woodwork for this. Even back then, people were curious, oh, let's check out this Tesla thing. So what was cool about this is we get inside and Dan and Mike start giving us a tour. This is what a naked Tesla Roadster looks like underneath. So it's like a little electric go-kart. And there's the back half of it with the battery pack and the power electronics module. And it was just so fascinating to see. I mean, this is just a showroom. It's a small place. Unfortunately, it's gone now. It makes me very sad. It's condos that are now in place of this, because this is in my view an historic building that I wish was still there. It was, to the best of my understanding, it was a GM dealership before they vacated it and Tesla took over, but it is gone now. So we get there, we got this DeLorean club, and you know, there were just these odd parallels that I started to make between, obviously all coincidental, but these odd parallels between DeLorean and Tesla. You had a larger-than-life CEO, John DeLorean. For those of you my age or older probably know, John was quite the maverick, for better and for worse. And so you had this larger-than-life CEO trying to build a unique new car, and they were built in the UK, or at least, you know, the Roadster's case, the gliders were done by Lotus in the UK and then shipped over to California to be matched up to the battery pack and finished. So there were just these bizarre, and of course the establishment hated them. That was the other common thing that Tesla and DeLorean had in common. And so, look, wrong way. All right. So that's Dan just showing us all around here, explaining what these cars were, because nobody knew Tesla back then. I mean, if most of us in this room probably weren't aware of Tesla back then. That's how small it started. But this was just such a great day, and I, you know, without this day, without these guys saying yes, I mean, I guess I probably would have found my way into the Tesla community eventually. But it was really, it's the generosity of these guys and of Tesla, and that to me has been something that stuck with me, and I think that permeates in the community too. It's like, you know, some car communities, you can look out in the room and it's all the same type of people, but one thing I always loved about the Tesla community is it's all walks of life. You know, some of us are coming into this for the performance aspect. Some of us are coming in here because these are the safest cars. Some of us are coming in here because we love the technology, the autonomous driving. There are so many different ways into the Tesla world. For me, it was, at first, the performance. DeLoreans, as some of you may know, not known for their performance. So they're really great in a lot of ways. Performance was never one of them, whether in 1981, 2009, or 2022. But one other interesting thing, I mean, you look at this now, like this is probably in collecting dust in Franz's design studio somewhere. That's the original Model S prototype that was just sitting back. So again, this is 2009, August 2009. That car would not be into production for 3 more years. So that was the functioning prototype that was just hanging out in the showroom. You couldn't get a test drive or a test ride in it, but it was there. It was there. In fact, I don't think I have a picture of the rolling mule, so a non-functioning Roadster, is over here behind Dan. That was the car that was sitting in that showroom too. That was what was used in Iron Man 1. If you look closely at Iron Man 1, that car is in the shot as well. There's another look at the original Model S prototype. Fun fact, that car used to be red. It's sort of the original version of Signature Red, and then they painted it white. But yeah, that was there. It was always cool to see. And there's young me giving a little spiel with my DeLorean shirt on, talking to the group about this exact thing, about the strange parallels that I had drawn the connection on between DeLorean and what Tesla was trying to do. So this is where it gets interesting, because it was a showroom where people could come and spend $110,000 plus to buy an original Tesla Roadster. But there was a back building that the public didn't have access to. And this is where, again, the generosity of Tesla really made the day something special and helped get me into Tesla. Because there was a building in the back, a separate building, probably a quarter of the size of this room, honestly. Not a big place, where this is where the gliders would come in. So by glider, I mean it was a car without any guts in it. So just a rolling chassis, basically a rolling body. So the cars would come in, Lotus would fly them into San Francisco International Airport, and then they would get trucked down to Menlo Park. And then the battery packs would come in from Japan, and Tesla would finish the cars here, prep them for delivery, and then send them off. Now, as many of you know, there were only 2,500 Roadsters ever made. There are fewer than that now, obviously, just because things happen in time. But this is where it all happened, and we got to see it, which is just, it's how welcoming Tesla was will always stand out to me. I mean, they just said, yeah, we'll come on back. And so, I mean, it's tough to see in these pictures, I think, but like this midnight gray Roadster right in the foreground of this picture, there's no battery pack in that car, so it's not ready to go yet. You've obviously got a red one in the back that's still getting prepped. That's what an original Roadster motor looks like. They just had it on the little sort of holder thing. And those, of course, the Roadsters were all single motor. Dual motor wouldn't come around for quite a long time. And in the background of this shot, you can see a whiteboard, which I wish I had taken in a better picture of. It was just a manual whiteboard where there were VIN numbers and the status of each car. Like that's how just garagey it was for Tesla back in the original days. There was no database software system. It was just a whiteboard of what is the status of each car? Have we delivered it to each customer yet? And there you go again. So there's the trunk space, of course, which some of you may know if you've ever gotten a chance to take a look at an original Roadster. I presume there's hopefully at least one or two here today. But again, no battery pack. There is a giant hole where the battery pack is supposed to be in that Roadster Sport. Then there's one more. You can actually, if you look closely, you can see how high the car is sitting. It's because there's not a 1,000-pound plus battery pack that's squatting the suspension down to where it's supposed to be. But this was all just super fascinating to see, and Tesla was just so kind. We had, by my count, I'll get to the pictures. Here we go. We had, I think, 17 DeLoreans that day, which is probably more than any of you have ever seen in one place at one time. And if you Model X owners out there have not already done this, this is a picture that you need to do. This picture never fails. This is one of my favorite pictures to do in the DeLorean world every single time. It's because you can't do it in any other car, not in the same way anyway, right? It just becomes this cool optical illusion, I think. But there they are, all lined up. 1981 to 1983 were the 3 model years of the DeLorean. And if you're curious, 2,500 Roadsters is really not a lot of cars. There were about 9,000 DeLoreans made. So by comparison, the DeLorean was mass-produced compared to an original Tesla Roadster. There's the other side of it. It just goes on for days. And I think it's so bizarre to me as time has gone on that having been a DeLorean owner and still a DeLorean superfan and now in the Tesla space, the first car to put gull-wing / falcon wing doors on a mass-produced car since the DeLorean, the Model X, and now the first vehicle to do a stainless steel body since the DeLorean, the Cybertruck. So whether intentionally or not, Elon clearly saw that DeLorean had a couple of good ideas that were worth using in their own way. There's again, just rows of stainless steel. You're in Florida, so warning, your stainless steel Cybertrucks will be extraordinarily hot to the touch. I am not joking. It's not quite burning bad, but it will not feel good if you happen to, you just happen to lean wrong on the car with bare skin exposed. It will be a very toasty experience for you in the Florida summer. But there is nothing that the stainless steel look in both the sunshine and artificial lighting at night. The way the light glows off the stainless bodies, you guys are going to love that, you Cybertruck owners. There's my car. That was my 1982 DeLorean, just set up for a little glamour shot there in front of the Tesla showroom. Now, that's part one of the story. So the next day, I email the Tesla guys to say, wow, we had an amazing turnout. Guys, thank you so much. This was an incredible event. And I thought that was the end of it. Except when Mike writes back and says, you want to come back and take a test drive? I had never driven, now certainly I was used to driving a rare car, a unique car, but I had never driven anything remotely as expensive or as fast as an original Tesla Roadster. So they invited me back, this 29-year-old kid, to come back and and jump into an original Roadster, and Mike came out with me, and it was we spent like an hour in the car. It wasn't just like a quick little 10-minute joyride. And just coincidentally, that would have been the exact color I would have bought. It looks kind of purple in that slide, but it was a dark blue original Roadster. And so, top off, and it is very quickly, I don't think I'd ever driven a convertible at that point in time either. So, again, the generosity shown by Tesla, and it's two specific people in this case. Dan stuck around Tesla for a while. Mike moved on to work at Apple, and now he's since moved on. But I still keep in touch with Mike. Mike actually listens to the podcast. So the thing about Mike, though, is, these guys knew that I was never. So this was the first time I'd ever driven an electric car, obviously, 2009, and I'm driving the best one in the world. So that's a high bar. Now, Mike knew I'm not buying. I'm driving a DeLorean, which were not super valuable cars. They still aren't. They're starting to slowly get up there. But Mike knows I'm not buying, and he says anyway, like, go ahead, come on, get on it. Like, go, push it. Punch. Okay, all right. If you can see there, that is 105 miles an hour. At Mike's, there aren't any cops in here, are there? Just go ahead and take a bathroom break. And law enforcement officers, you can't prove this was me. So, at Mike's encouragement, he's like, come on, go. Like, he wanted to show what the car could do. So that's 105, and this, by the way, this is Mike leaning over taking the pictures. You can see both my hands on the steering wheel. 105, then 110, and then 115. So my wife was not thrilled when she saw me putting together this presentation before I left. But yeah, it was such a thrill, and from there, back when there was a tachometer in the original Roadster, for no reason. That's why we don't have tachometers in our cars now. This is a binnacle more or less carried over from the Elise. So yeah, it's 13,500 RPMs, but single gear obviously. So that's how it worked. But yeah, that was just an insane thrill for me. I mean, it was unlike anything that I had ever seen, anything I had ever experienced. And after that, as I think many of you can probably relate, I couldn't stop thinking about Tesla at that point. And I went all the way down the rabbit hole as I learned. This was before they had the Fremont factory. I mean, if you go way back, you'll remember that they were looking at a decommissioned Air Force base to use as a factory in Southern California. That was one of the finalist sites, and I think there was another site in New Mexico that they were looking at if memory serves. But then they get the NUMMI plant from Toyota for a song, and I'm like, oh, can I figure out a way to buy a Model S? And no was the answer. Those were too expensive, too rich for my blood at the time. But yeah, that's what your face looks like when you're doing 115 down the freeway. It's a very satisfied look on your face, and now I'm like, what's crazy is that was number 935. So now I'm very grateful to have my Model 3 Performance. My car now blows that car away. That's how quickly technology has changed. Like, I get to have that thrill every single day, although not in convertible format. That would be an extra bonus if there were the open top. But maybe down the road that'll be possible. But yeah, in 935, so sort of relatively early in the production run. And there's a better look at it back at the end of the test drive. And then fast forward to 2018. So, I live in the most expensive area of the country. Model S was not in my immediate future, but I knew the Model 3 would be. Once I went down the rabbit hole and started learning all about the cars and about the company, if you go way back with Tesla, you may remember the code name Blue Star might mean something to you. That was the original project code name for the Model 3. White Star was the code name for the Model S. But this, I knew years in advance exactly what I wanted. I wanted, before I even knew what the options were, I wanted a multi-coat red performance Model 3 with white interior. The only thing I didn't get, the only option I had hoped for that never came to pass, was an air suspension, because I have kind of a weird driveway, but I ended up figuring it out and made it work. But that was July 29th of 2018. where my day had finally come. Now, this is fast forwarding a little far ahead in that after the Roadster test drive in '09, again, this is just swirling in my head constantly. And eventually I came to figure out, all right, well, what can I do here? Like, how can I sort of channel this Tesla enthusiasm into something fun, something positive? And that's where Ride the Lightning came from. I was out to dinner with my wife one night in 2015 and thought, you know what, I could start a Tesla podcast, but there must be a million of those, because there's a million podcasts for any hobby or interest. And took out my phone at dinner and looked up, searched iTunes, and nothing came up. I was like, this can't be right. There have to be, and there were not at the time. And so, I debuted Ride the Lightning in August 2nd, I think, is when it published. August 2nd, 2015. And what's funny is on the first episode, I sort of introduced myself and to anybody that would happen to find the podcast and just explained why I was doing this and who I was. And someone pointed out to me way later and said, well, you know, back on that episode 1, you said, you said that someday you hoped maybe you could get Elon Musk on the podcast. Well, fast forward to 2019, and that actually happened. So, yeah, I was the first, I guess, Tesla community person to ever get an interview with Elon. This was at their Palo Alto, then corporate headquarters. They've, of course, since packed up shop and moved to Texas. That Palo Alto facility is now just an engineering center, but this took months to set up, but eventually it did happen, and Elon was extremely generous with his time. I got the PR team, back when they had a PR team, promised me a half an hour, even though I'd asked for an hour, but we were just chatting away, and Elon was engaged enough where we went for an hour, and he was just very gracious with his time. And this was, by the way, this was at 8 o'clock at night. It wasn't even the end of his day. He still had one more meeting after this, which he was quite late for, because I kept him for quite a while. But this was just an incredible thrill, obviously. And I'll tell you, off mic, I got a little time with him as well, and he is the same guy off the microphone, off air, that he is when you hear him on earnings calls or in interviews. It's singularly focused on SpaceX and on Tesla, and that was just something I'll treasure for a while. And then it just kept rolling after that. A few months later, and this was 3 weeks before the Cybertruck unveiling. And so if only it could have been right after, because then I could have asked him about the Cybertruck. I mean, I tried to get truck info out of him, but he was too good. This is Franz von Holzhausen, for those of you that don't know, this is the guy that designed all of your cars and my car. I've never had the opportunity to interview the guy that designed my car before, having owned a DeLorean. I've never interviewed Giugiaro, and I don't even know who designed my previous car, which was an Infiniti G35. But meeting Franz was super cool down at the design studio. He was great, and it's just been an incredible journey for me that all started, and now that's at our club event in last summer, the Tesla Owners of Silicon Valley. We had a cool event at a professional photography studio, and so that's the best picture of me in the car that I have, and I love that picture. That was well worth the money spent to do that. But it's just been an incredible ride. I have such a blast doing my podcast every Sunday. If you haven't given it a listen, feel free to give it a try. It comes out like clockwork, 9 a.m. Eastern every Sunday morning. I recorded tomorrow's right before I left for here on Thursday night, recapping the earnings call and everything that went on there. But it's every Sunday for the last 7 years. I just have a blast doing it, and I've met so many incredible people, not just today, but over the years. We're all here for a shared common thing that we're all enthusiastic about. And there's, for me, one common bit of feedback I get on Ride the Lightning is, I love how enthusiastic you are. And and I appreciate that, because that's intentional, because we're bombarded with enough negativity in the world that my goal with my podcast every week is to just try and have a shared hour of enthusiasm for something that we all love. Let's shut out the rest of the world all the even within the Tesla world, like the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and all the bad stuff. Like, no, not that I'm going to shy away from calling Tesla out on something if I need to, but we're here to have fun. We're all here at TeslaCon because we love these things, and so that's what I try to bring to Ride the Lightning every week. So if you've not known me until now and you do want to check out this, so this was episode 220, and very easy to remember by sheer coincidence, the Elon interview is episode 200, if you're ever interested in going to look at it. So I'm on pretty much all the major podcast services. I'm not on YouTube because this is a radio face. I'm sorry you're subjected to it now. But I honestly, I do love podcasting because, not that it's like a lost art, but I mean, radio is. I mean, everybody listens to podcasts now. But for me, I love podcasts because you can take them anywhere. Like, I've talked to many of you already this weekend, last night and today, they'd say, oh, I like to listen to you in the car or when I'm walking my dog. It's like, well, YouTube's awesome, and there's obviously so many great video things. We're going to hear from a lot of great YouTubers today. But I like podcasts because you can take them anywhere, and you're not necessarily glued to a screen. So I'm around every Sunday, and I'm here all today. So thank you all for having me, and if there's any Q&A, I'm happy to take it. Otherwise, I will hand it back off to Nick. Traveling salesman now, where we're just like, tell me all about it, Nick. We got a deal for you.
So I'm going to hand the mic out. I would ask that we've all seen those shareholder videos where someone gets to the mic and then speaks for 20 minutes trying to make a point. Please don't do that. Keep your questions short and to the point, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. So my question for you, which might take up the next 15 minutes actually. So that's the backstory. That's the history. So what does the future hold for Ryan McCaffery's car-owning plans? You said you've got a Cybertruck on order, so talk a little bit about that, but then generally your thoughts on the future of Tesla. Where are we all going to go from here?
Well, you know what's crazy to me is the Roadster was the beginning, but in my opinion, we're still in the beginning. All of this right now is still chapter 1. In 10 years from now, like Tesla's goal is to be making 20 million cars a year in 10 years. By 2030 was what they said at Battery Day 2 years ago. Even if they only make it to 10 million cars per year, I have no doubt that they'll get to 20. But we know Tesla and timelines don't quite always match up. But even if they only make it to 10, think about that. That this year they're going to make about 1.4 million cars. So basically, in 8 years from now, I guess, there'll be almost 10 times what they made today, and that's half the goal. They're going to get to 20. So there is a lot. So much room left to go. And for me specifically, for those of you who support me on Patreon, I just recorded a recent Patreon bonus episode where I'm basically the short version is I'm trying to sell my very fiscally minded wife on a Cybertruck. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see. This car, I'm very fortunate. This is a unicorn performance Model 3. It's literally one of the first performance Model 3s off the line. It has free lifetime supercharging, which not a lot of Model 3s do. So my wife is very keen to keep that car, which is fine. But as part of my Tesla adventures, having been doing the podcast for a while before I got my car, and thus before I got a referral code, I had the extraordinary good fortune of getting enough referrals for the next gen Roadster. So that's the next one that will grace my garage whenever Tesla finally decides to build it. But there's so many vehicle spaces for them yet to get into, Nick. It's Cybertruck's going to be big, but I actually was fortunate enough to be able to ask Elon the question at Battery Day, what do you think the max run rate for the Cybertruck's going to be? And he said about 250,000 a year. We'll see if that holds. I mean, the F-150 sells a lot more than that each year, so we'll see how the Cybertruck proves to be demand-wise. Because if you're trying to get to 10 million, 20 million a year, 250,000 Cybertrucks isn't actually that much in that grand scheme of things. So they need to do minivans, they need to do this $25,000 car, the smaller sedan and SUV platform that they talked about on the earnings call. There's a long way to go. So pretty much name any vehicle segment, and they've got to get into it sooner or later.
Cool, thank you. I forgot to ask this earlier, so talking about that, hands up if you have a Cybertruck reservation.
Oh, it's most of the room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
I do a Patreon group call with my Patreon backers every month, and it's always most of the room. It's crazy. Now it's $100 down. What have you got to lose? But I'd be curious by a show of hands. So I personally went through. I was lucky enough to be there in the room for the Cybertruck reveal, and I was on, I guess, stage left. So I was on the side of the stage closest to where the truck came out. They opened a garage door with dry ice smoke, and it comes out. And I hated
did I.
the Cybertruck.
I absolutely hated it.
I was in the room going, this is a disaster. This is the worst possible thing that they could have possibly done. What is wrong with Elon? I heard this from a lot of my listeners, and I went through it myself. Over a span of about 48 hours, by the end of that, I was like, no, I get it now. And
it took me less than an hour. So he rolled on stage. I almost threw up.
Yeah.
and then as soon as they opened the reservations, I was refreshing that webpage as fast as I possibly could.
What's funny is, so at the Cybertruck unveiling event, outside, so when the party started outside, before everybody goes inside to get near the stage and the unveiling starts, outside, you may remember like social media photos, there were a bunch of prop cars. They had Blade Runner movie prop cars, as part of this cyberpunk theme. And then often on one side, there was a Back to the Future kitted DeLorean sitting there. And I'm going, why is this here? This 80s, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't fit in at all with this whole cyberpunk theme. And then after this, and it still didn't hit me as the Cybertruck came out. I didn't realize what the body was until the presentation started. And that's really, the stainless steel factor is what started my conversion into wanting. It's like, okay, because I will say, those of you that know me, my car is detailed to the nines. I'm obsessive about it, probably to an unhealthy degree, because it's the most expensive thing I've ever bought, and I want to take really good care of it. But I miss having a stainless steel car because the maintenance, it's basically no maintenance. You can clean the whole thing with a bottle of Windex and paper towels if you want to, or just soap and water. There's no waxing, there's no ceramic coating, none of that stuff. So yeah, I miss having a stainless steel car, and those of you that are going to get Cybertrucks, which is most of the room, you're gonna come to understand, oh yeah, this is really great, not having to worry about paint. Oh, it's scratched. You take a heavy-duty Scotch-Brite pad, and you just go with the grain. You can take scratches right out of the body. So it's a beautiful thing.
I had the joy of having dinner with Sandy the other night, and one of the things that we talked about was the Cybertruck, and I'm sure this afternoon we'll ask Sandy that question as well. But Sandy's enthusiastic about the Cybertruck. I think would be.
Why has no one done it? Because it costs too much, and it lasts too long. You've got an industry that's obsessed with obsolescence. They want you to buy a new car. They don't want you to have a car with a body that will outlive you. So that's why nobody does this.
Alrighty, any burning questions from the audience? Where are we going to go? I saw the hand at the back there.
Thanks, Ryan. My name's Joel from Tesla Saskatchewan. Just a quick question on if you share the view that Optimus will be more important for the company going forward than the vehicles, given who you've talked to within the company.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm a car guy. I've always have been. I've been obsessed with cars since I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I'd be sitting in the back seat with my little sister, and I would name the exact make and model of every car on the road. I was just weird. I had this big giant hope chest full of Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars. I've been a car guy forever, and just the DeLorean was my dream car, and I was so lucky to have that. And now that I live a new car dream. So I am personally not as interested in Optimus as a Tesla fan, in the same way that like I don't really talk about the energy side of the business on my podcast because it's great. I mean, I just actually solar panels are now on my roof. They went on last week, and I'm waiting for the inspection and the activation. So I'm fully embrace it, but it's just not as much of interest to me. And Optimus, I don't know. I mean, it's totally forging new ground. I hope so. Like if there's a $20,000 home robot that can legitimately do tasks that otherwise take my wife and I's time, that frees us then to spend more time with our daughter or get some other projects done, that's a great thing. I mean, for me, being a car guy, I would prefer Elon's brain be more focused on the cars and that problem, but you know, so I guess I'm just kind of waiting to see how it goes. I guess I'm neither optimistic nor pessimistic about Optimus would be my like total non-answer to that question.
Hey Ryan, so you remember from our conversation I picked up at the airport with you over here yesterday, which I was great talking to you, of course. We talked about into podcasts myself, produced one, so I listen to a lot of podcasts, even multiple Tesla ones. I love talking Tesla.
There aren't any other Tesla podcasts.
Well, I think yours is the most successful, but talking Tesla I love. But no,
I love Rob and everybody else.
But I've listened to your shows since 2017, and I love your positivity and informative and engaging the audience. You know, of course, I've called in the hotline multiple times. One thing I'm curious about, and again, if you're not willing to, and I don't want to share this, I understand, but not just Patreon, just listenership in general. I'm just curious how many listeners on average you have per episode.
Yeah, it's about. I mean, it's like it's not YouTube numbers, but yeah, it's like 25,000, 30,000 people a week listen to the podcast, and I mean that's starting from zero. I know that if I did commit to YouTube, I could grow that by a ton because YouTube's just obviously such a more accessible platform. But for me, I have a full-time job that I love, that I'm so grateful to have a job I love doing, and I have a family, and I don't want to do more Tesla stuff at the expense of either of those two things. So I've tried to find a balance. So the podcast thing works for me because I can record it late Friday night after I put my daughter to bed, and I can look like hell, and it doesn't matter. I'm not on video. I can just get it done late at night, and then put it out there on Sunday mornings. So the podcast thing works for me.
Hey Ryan, I'm Doug Carey, been a regular listener for a year and a half. So, question, do you ever see Tesla either merging with or acquiring or forming some sort of alliance with the European car manufacturers to try to improve what we all might acknowledge as a weakness, the finish of the cars?
I mean, I probably just echo what, like, Elon has addressed this, and I certainly can't disagree with what he said on it, which is the answer would be no, because Tesla does things in completely their own way that they'd have to retrain everyone from zero to do things the Tesla way. I mean, I get what you're saying about fit and finish. Now, from what I understand, the Giga Berlin cars are coming out looking really nice. The Shanghai cars, by all accounts, are really clean, really very straight, good cars. So, hopefully, over time it's gotten better out of Fremont, and Texas is just getting started. So we'll see on as far as that goes. But yeah, I don't think there'd really be a lot of value in Tesla buying up anybody else, because I'm not sure what they would. I mean, it would just be easier to hire their general assembly guys, right? The people that are really good at doing the fit and finish, rather than buying a whole company.
All right, one more question before we let Ryan go. Right at the back, right at the very back, isn't it?
I can shout. If you would comment, if you would please, if you had Elon's ear, which is a stretch, what would you want him to see in the next generation smaller Tesla?
That's a good question. I mean, it's got to be the next one. The so-called $25,000 car has got to be the one that tips the scales, that makes where there's just no argument for anybody to choose a gas-powered car. So it's got to be. It's not going to be like a Model 3 performance in terms of performance, but it's got to be good enough. So I mean, range would be a big one, because I mean, some of you may have lived this and you kind of come through the other side, or you may hear about this from non-Tesla people in your lives. The range anxiety is a thing until you own the cars and until you live with them. So I think a $25,000 car has to have, even at the base price, has to be at least 300 miles of range. So I think that would be probably the number one thing. Because certainly you're going to get the Tesla safety, you're going to get the software updates, you're going to get autopilot. But I as kind of a boring and oft-used answer as that is, I probably would just say because a 200, the difference, even let's say 275. I think just that mental jump between having the 3 in front and the 2 in front. I think there would be a huge difference in getting people on board with a 300-mile range car versus a 275-mile range car. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Enjoy the day.